It was either Navratilova or Mary Jo Fernandez who said during this last Australian Open that one of the strokes the women still need a lot of improvement on is the serve. And I, for one, could not agree more. I firmly believe it's the way that the women have been taught to serve that are desperately holding them back. They've had this quick fix over the last 10, 15 years where you bring your feet together and you just bend your knees and you just push up into the serve, and that will give you a good serve. And it's this teaching that's really holding the serve back. This methodology creates a disconnect between the hips and the arms, and therefore there's no coil produced, no balance, and no rotation. I'm here to tell you today that the reasons the women don't serve as well as the men have nothing to do with strength and everything to do with technique. Using my patented figure 8 tennis system, I'm going to show you the definitive reasons why women still struggle with the serve. There are two basic principles in my system. Number one, the hips and arms are connected through a figure 8. The hips make a small movement and the arms follow in a larger figure 8. Secondly, the 45-degree angle is archetypal in geometry, nature, and in the serve. Take a look here and we'll see how they play out. Let's look at the number one woman in the world, Caroline Wozniacki. Watch all these frames go by and watch the lack of hip rotation. See this? First thing she does is draw her shoulders back and lock her front leg. What this does is it disconnects her hips from her upper body. She actually locks her hips. So now she's forced to use her upper body and her arms to work her way into the serve. This is like the tail wagging the dog. Okay, see her arms are moving into the toss, and look at her lower body. Completely passive, inactive. She's not drawing into any coil at all. So what's going to happen here is she'll have no slope in her shoulders, and she won't have a dynamic way to go into the serve. Look, both her arms are up, the ball's almost left her hands. There it goes. Look at her lower body. It's perpendicular to the net. And take a look at her shoulders. There's no slope in her shoulders. See that? They're very passive. So now she's going to try and compensate by pushing down into the court, straight down, once again, perpendicular to the net. And then she's going to try and push up into the serve and get power through her legs and by swinging her arm fast. But look what this causes when she gets up there. Because she doesn't come out of a coil, because she just pushes straight into the serve, she has to try and overcompensate. Look at her face. She hasn't even hit the ball yet, and she's looking towards the ground. So she's very off balance, and the energy is not going into the contact point. So it's a very, very inefficient serve. And you'll see here there's a big difference between the women's serves and the men's. Now we're going to take Nadal. He's not even known really for his serve, but he serves pretty much like the rest of the men. First thing he does is he slopes his shoulders forward. Look at that. His shoulders are actually forward and butt sticking out, and it's his hips. Watch this. You see, as his foot comes down, look at his hips. They're the first thing to move. His racket is still over the baseline, but his hips have already started moving. Look at that 45-degree angle. See that? He's got that 45-degree angle on the hips, and it's a small movement, but it's very important. Now he's almost gotten into his full coil. See that? And look at the slope in his shoulders. See, where Wozniacki's were almost straight across, his shoulders are sloped. So when he comes out of his coil, his eyes rest easily, comfortably up at the hit. See that? He's making contact, and he looks very comfortable and balanced at the hit. And we can see this in all the men's serves versus the women's serves. There are some women that serve correctly, but we'll show you those in a minute. Here we go. Jankovic. Same thing. Hips really haven't moved. She brings her feet together. Hips are parallel to the net. Both arms are up. Look at the lack of slope in her shoulders. See that? So now she's going to have to overcompensate and really swing hard, and look at her eyes. You see they're peering up at the hit, but her face is actually facing the net. So the energy is not going up into the ball. Let's see Roger. Nice serve here. Hips moving. Look at the emblem on his shorts. See that? At a 45-degree angle to the net. Look at the beautiful slope in his shoulders. It gets tighter and tighter into his coil. Now when he comes around with his hips, it's effortless. See that? Because he's already had the first part of the serve conquered. Now look at his contact. Eyes comfortably up at the hit. He's not peering at the ball. He's got his whole face looking up there. So in order to have a comfortable, balanced hit with the energy going up to the contact, you have to have the proper coil going into the serve. Let's take a look at another number one player, Martina Hingis, one of my favorite players. And she goes into her serve. Look at those hips, parallel to the net. You can see it right there. And look at the lack of slope in her shoulders. So she's going to try and bend her knees. See that? And now when she comes around, look at her face. Looking straight at the net, almost looking down into the court. And she just has barely contacted the ball. So there's no energy going up into the hit. Now, as I said a minute ago, some of the women do serve well. Serena, great example. She's probably got the best serve in the women's game right now. Watch the Nike logo on her skirt. See that? It's moving ahead of the arm, and look at her hips. They get into that nice 45-degree angle. Right? So she doesn't just bend her knees. She screws down into the court, and then her hips start to come around. Look at the emblem. Now they're coming around, and look at her eyes. She's up there on the hit. Now I'm going to show you one of my top juniors. See this is during one of our lessons. Look at the stripe on his pants as he goes into his serve. The nationally ranked boy, Warren Wood. But look at that slope in his shoulders because of the way he draws his hips into the serve and screws down into the court. And now when he makes contact, all the energy goes up into the hit. Eyes are up there very comfortably. So because of the way the serve is taught to the girls, there's a disconnect between the hips and the arms, and this causes a definitive lack of hip rotation that impedes the women's serves. Let's take a look here. Nadal's, see that hip rotation at the 45? And Wozniacki, parallel to the net. You can see there's no actions in this serve. Same with Hingis. See how passive her lower body is because her hips are not really screwing down into the court. Where look at Serena. See how her hips are at that 45 and she's really pulling with her hips. Same with Federer. Look at that nice hip rotation on his serve. It may look small, but it makes all the difference in the world. Once again, take a look at Warren. See that nice hip rotation and look at the shoulders, nice and sloped, ready to come up and strike the ball with energy. And here you have Hingis. Look at her shoulders, parallel to the ground. Hips are very inactive. There's no screwing down. She's just bending her knees. So all of this causes an imbalance at contact because the women are overcompensating for a lack of coil in the beginning. Take a look here. See how Wozniacki's face is into the court where it should be up on the hit. And look at Nadal. His eyes are comfortably resting on the contact, keeping his energy and his body weight up into the hit. Once again, Hingis almost looks towards the ground when she goes to make contact, so her arm is all alone up there. There's another view of it. You can see there's no weight, there's no energy in the contact point or in her arm. I've trained many players to get this proper rotation and balance on their serve. I've worked with Sam Querrey, Steve Foreman, Steve Johnson, USC team. Many players have served on the 8-board to get this proper rotation and balance. Here you see one of my students, Steve Foreman, top collegiate player, top junior, practicing his serve on the 8-board. As you can see, as he turns his feet right and left, it trains his hips to pull his arm into play, so everything's connected. Watch here in slow motion. As his feet turn, you can see his hips turn, and that pulls his arm into the hit. This all trains Steve to get into a proper coil, so he doesn't have to overcompensate or arm the ball or muscle the ball or bend his knees too much or toss too high. It just makes for a very fluid motion. So by training on the 8-board, this gives him the muscle memory to get into this coil and have the natural energy going up into the hit and a very balanced serve. So I encourage you to consider these fundamentals and principles and try them in your own game. They make sense and they work. for every player at every level, at any age. And the concept of just bending your knees, tossing high, and then pushing up into the serve, as you can see, doesn't work for any player at any level. Play well.